Oh, look, Wisp, we got mail. True scary stories. Hmm, let's read this inside. I wonder what's inside. Shall we read the first story?
To whoever reads this on your channel, please, I'm just not gonna share my name. You can call me John. I need to tell it clean and straight because every time I try to dramatize it, people say it sounds like a horror script. This wasn't a script. It happened to me last winter and it involved nothing supernatural. Just people, which I'm starting to think is worse. I moved into apartment 4B because it was cheap, and the landlord, a man named Mr. Vega, didn't require much. First month, last month, no questions. The building was a 4-story brick wedge near a highway off-ramp with a bodega downstairs and bars on the lobby windows. I worked weird hours doing returns at a warehouse, so a small place where nobody knew me sounded perfect. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbor's TV, and the radiator clanked like it was knocking from the inside, but it was mine. I remember that feeling closing the door for the first night and thinking, finally. On day 3, I found a stack of mail wedged under the door. Jury summonses, a medical bill, 2 postcards, all addressed to M. Ortega. I carried it to Mr. Vega's office on the first floor. He said, "She's gone. Left in a rush. You can toss it." I asked if I should forward it. He stared at me long enough that I felt like I've done something wrong, then shrugged. "Up to you." I kept the postcards. They were from somewhere coastal, hand-signed, Mom. The postcards stopped in September. I moved in November. A week later, I woke up at 2:17 a.m. I know because I checked my phone. Something had waken me up, I just wasn't sure what. Then I heard it again. A hard, practical jiggle coming from my living room. It was that loud that I was able to hear it from my bedroom. So I went to investigate. I slid over to the front door, slowly and quietly, as to not be heard. I didn't open the door. I waited, counted to 10, then another 10. When I finally looked through the peephole, the hall was empty. I told myself it was a drunk neighbor at the wrong door. Still, the next day I bought a new deadbolt and installed it myself. I felt better until I tested the old key and realized it still turned the lower lock easily. That night I stacked a chair under the knob and told myself I was being dramatic. The next day, a man in a navy jacket knocked at noon while I was awake and making coffee. "Gas inspection," he said, showing me a laminated ID against the peephole. It looked real because it was laminated. He was smiling like a dentist. I told him I would call Mr. Vega to confirm. The man's smile shrunk by a millimeter. "We're doing the whole line today," he said. "If we don't get access, they can shut the whole building down. You don't want that." I dialed Mr. Vega while the man waited, hands in his pockets, rocking on his heel like he had all the time in the world. Vega didn't answer. "You can come back," I told the man, after I confirmed. He didn't argue. He kept rocking, then nodded once and smiled wider, all teeth. "Sure thing." He took a step back and, before turning away, looked past my shoulder. I closed the door and stood with my ear pressed to it, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall. After a minute, I looked through the peephole. He hadn't gone downstairs. He was at the end of the corridor, tilted toward apartment 4D's peephole like he was listening through it. That night, I noticed a faint, sweet smell in my bathroom. Cologne that wasn't mine. It was strongest near the vent. I unscrewed the grate with a butter knife and found a piece of tape stuck to the inside with a long brown hair attached. My skin crawled. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of someone unlocking my door. The chain rattled, and the chair slightly moved. I froze, whispering, "Hey," just loud enough to carry. Everything went silent. After a long moment, I heard slow footsteps retreat. Later that day, a business card was slid under my door. The front had a fake-looking city gas stamp. On the back, in careful handwriting, "Gas inspection tomorrow. Must enter." He never did come. The real gas inspector came a few days later. He showed me his ID before I asked, and told me no one from his company had been there earlier in the week.
I didn't even question it. I moved out a week later. On my last night in the apartment, another card came under the door. This one had no logo, just the same careful handwriting. Now in my new place, I sleep with a wedge under the door and the chain locked. I've never seen the man in the navy jacket again, but sometimes in the middle of the night, I wake up certain that someone's just outside, listening. If anything happens, I'll keep you updated. I've been searching for my own place for months when I finally found it. A small one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of an older brick building. Nothing fancy, but the rent was affordable, the neighborhood quiet, and the landlord seemed decent enough. The previous tenant had suddenly moved, according to him, but I didn't think much of it at the time. People break leases all the time. I moved in on a Saturday afternoon. The place smelled faintly of paint, like someone had tried to freshen it up. But there was a strange undercurrent to the air too. Stale, metallic, almost like old coins. I cracked the windows and told myself it was just the pipes or the radiator. That first night, while unpacking boxes, I noticed faint scratches on the inside of the front door near the deadbolt. They weren't the kind you'll make with keys. They were long, jagged, uneven, almost like someone had been prying from the inside. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself it must have been from the old lock or careless movers. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps above me. Slow, dragging steps across the ceiling. But here's the thing. I was on the top floor. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart racing, telling myself it had to be pipes or maybe the building shifting. Eventually, the noise stopped. The next morning, I asked the landlord if there was any storage or crawl space above me. He looked at me for a long moment before shaking his head. "No," he said, "just roof." Then he quickly changed the subject. Over the next week, small things started happening. I'll find the bathroom light on when I knew I shut it off. My keys weren't where I left them. Once, I came home to find the window in the living room unlocked. I thought maybe I was just distracted with moving stress. But then came the smell. That same metallic odor I noticed on day one. It grew stronger, especially at night. It seemed to seep from the walls, thick enough to make me nauseous. One evening, while cleaning, I dropped a bottle of cleaner behind the bathroom sink cabinet. When I bent down to retrieve it, I noticed something strange. The back panel of the cabinet wasn't flush. It looked like it had been removed and screwed back in multiple times. My stomach tightened. I unscrewed it. Behind the panel was a narrow, pitch black cavity, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The air that came out was ice cold, and the metallic stench was overwhelming. Shaking, I shined my phone's flashlight inside. The beam fell on a pile of objects: a crumpled blanket, a disposable razor, empty food wrappers, and on top of it all, a small stack of Polaroid photos. My hands were trembling as I picked them up. Every single one of them was of the same thing: my apartment. The kitchen, the bathroom, the hallway, and in the last one, taken from what looked like my bedroom closet. I was asleep in my bed. I dropped the photos and backed out of the bathroom, my chest tightening. I didn't stop to grab anything. I bolted out the door, ran down the stairs, and didn't look back. When I told the landlord, he insisted it was impossible. Said I must have staged it or was confused. But the look in his eye told me he already knew. Someone had been living in that crawl space. Maybe they still were. I never went back for my things. I left the lease, the deposit, everything behind. It's been a year, and I still wake up some nights to that image stilled in my mind. That image of a hole behind the cabinet. Those are some pretty interesting stories. Very scary too. What do you think, Wisp? Yeah, I agree. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this time, and welcome to my channel. I'll see you next time.